How do you know when you're falling in love? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Love Unexpected, a true story that will take you on a romantic journey that I promise will make you smile, sigh, and believe in the power of love. I'm your host, Tom Howie. This amazing story follows a young woman named Dawn Lawson, who had the experience of a lifetime as she traveled through Poland and Ukraine in 1992, shortly after they had become free from communist control. Her adventure is filled with unexpected turns, twists, and revelations sure to capture your heart and imagination. So let's dive into the story of how she found love that she never expected from across the sea. Thank you for joining us. Off we go. Well, hello, Dawn. We're steaming our way here in Season 2 of Love Unexpected. We've had a couple of things that are mysterious, some of the things coming into focus. Willy has reached out physically by holding your hand, walking from the restaurant to the subway, and I just want to know, was this enough for you? Did this confirm where you were going?
Well, actually, no. It really wasn't enough for me because he hadn't said anything to me about his intentions, which is probably a woman thing.
Yeah, but he did write the note, "I like you." Was that not enough?
No, not yet. My mind was trying to make sense of these two rapid days. Of course, I had questions. I didn't know if this was a romantic fling for him or if he was hoping for a long-term relationship to develop.
Well, before we get back into that part of the story, let's talk about a little recap here. You're now into week 2 of a 2-week trip. You've had a couple of surprises. Friends, Sergey from Donetsk has found you. That was on Friday. Olga, traveling by train from Moscow. 8 hours she found you without a cell phone, didn't know exactly where you were. And that was on Saturday. And now you also believe that Willy could be your future husband, and you hear that there are other things going on. And yet there's another surprise coming for you soon. So here we continue the story, and we're on Monday, May 25th.
Yes. So Trish and Olga and I headed to breakfast that morning. And before entering the dining room, we noticed that there were several people from the tour that were just crowded in the doorway of this side room. So, of course, naturally, the three of us were curious, and we joined them to see what was going on. And Tom, what I heard was, "Dawn Lawson, I'm looking for her."
Was this person British, you're telling me?
No, but she had a British accent. It was very high.
Okay.
High-pitched voice.
I didn't know if that was like a British accent, because a lot of Europeans do speak English with a British accent. Or you were just doing the absolute worst Russian accent ever.
Well, I made my way through the crowd, and I saw Natasha, who was another ballet dancer who had toured as a guest artist with the Donetsk Ballet in 1990. And I had met her when I had met Olga. And we'd kept in touch over the years. And Natasha spoke beautiful English, and she was trained in the British English.
Sure.
And so her English it did have that sound to it. And she had traveled for 2 days from Kazan, Russia. So if you ever look on a map, Kazan is quite a distance to the east of Moscow. So she had to travel to Moscow and then down to Kiev. And she was riding this train in hopes of finding me. And she lived so far away that I never dreamed that she would take the time or the money and expense to try to come find me in Kiev. But she did. So it was just blessing upon blessing. I mean, Tom, again, this is the third person who found me without knowing where I would be. And of all places, she found me at our hotel. It wasn't even like we were performing somewhere so that there was any word out.
Okay, so yet another person has found you. What I wonder in all of this, how many more people traveled hours and hours and hours and never found you, and you never found out about it? That's really sad.
I don't know. But Tom, you've been to Eastern Europe. And when I say that people that I had met from Eastern Europe had captured my heart, it's because they show love with more than words. And Natasha, bless her heart, after 2 days, she just looked weary, but her face broke into this huge smile when she saw me, and she threw her arms around me and she presented me with a bouquet of lily of the valley. And I was just overwhelmed by her love. So I spoke to Lindsay about Natasha. She's got a deep faith. Her professional dance talent was beautiful, and she was fluent in English. And I said, could she join the tour just like Olga did? And he agreed. So we all ate breakfast, and Natasha shared with us how she was doing, and it was not well. During her 2-day train ride, her overnight bag had been stolen, and she did have some of the essentials, but I realized that we did need to have the team pitch in to help her put together the other items that she needed, and they were glad to help her. Then after eating, we took Natasha to our suite.
So, yet another signpost was the fact that you got a suite when you checked into this hotel, and you had, what, 2 rooms and 4 beds? I mean, and you didn't even expect that when you checked in. But God was making provision for something he knew was coming down the line.
Absolutely. Because now there are 4 of us in this room. I just was so amazed because there's plenty of room. I love that God had already prepared that place for Olga and Natasha before I even knew they were joining us.
All right, so now we're up to the point where the team is going to go on a tour and look around all the historic sites there in Kiev. Is that correct?
Yes, we hadn't yet had that opportunity. So with the surprises of Natasha and Olga being with us to see the city, Tom, I can honestly say now my heart was completely full. Our first stop was at the ancient city gate of Kiev. It was over 1,000 years old. Until then, I had never seen a building from the Middle Ages. It looked like a castle fortress with battlement-lined roofs and massive archways. I mean, truly, the brickwork and the stonework was stunning. Then inside, there were numerous arches and this oval dome that allowed for natural acoustics to resonate. So the team took the opportunity to sing a cappella, and it created this very reverent atmosphere. Then afterwards, we walked upstairs to a level that led to an outside balcony, and Willy just suddenly took my hand again, right out there in public, in amongst the group, and my heart leapt. And people from the team noticed, and they began whispering and smiling and looking at us. But I just kept on holding his hand. Then on the balcony, we met up with Steve, who was Willy's roommate at the hotel. And I later found out that he was the one that was helping Willy come up with ways to woo me. And they'd bought several cards in a gift shop, and Steve was helping him with what to write on the cards to me.
I think it's interesting that public display of affection was not banned, but the alcohol that would help you get there was.
Our next stop on the tour was St. Sophia's Cathedral, and that was an easy walk. Let me just describe that a bit because it was amazing. The bell tower looked like a 4-tiered cake with blue icing and white intricate piping, all topped off with this magnificent gold onion-shaped dome. And the sanctuary and the other buildings were white with lots of arches and gold onion domes. And the cathedral was also over 1,000 years old, and it was just magnificent. Willy was still holding my hand all the way there, and he led me inside through the sanctuary, and my heart just continued to beat, it seems like, faster and faster. And I felt myself moved not only by him holding my hand, but then by looking at the beauty that was inside of this sanctuary. There were massive frescoes that were painted on the walls and this gold ornate sculptures, and tears just welled up inside my eyes. Then Willy led me outside, and we found this bearded man playing a bandura which is the national musical instrument of Ukraine, and it has this beautiful sound. Tom, I now felt like I was the heroine in this romantic movie. You know, girl goes to Europe for the first time and falls for a man in a beautiful ancient city.
So what I'm hearing here is you're in a very romantic place. You've got Stephen, who we'll call Cyrano at this point because he's helping Willy with the words to woo you. I'm thinking if Willy doesn't make a move in a place like this, he ain't going to.
Well, let me just finish off the day and you'll find out. We did some street ministry that afternoon, but again, I found myself shivering from the cold, damp weather. We got back to the hotel and Willy came to our suite, and now 5 of us drank tea and ate some snacks and chatted, and then he took me by the hand and he led me out of the room to the upstairs lobby just so that we could be alone. We sat on the couch, and after all the emotions that had been warring inside of me, I knew I had to let it out. And I knew God had given us a green light to go ahead with the relationship. But realistically, looking at our lives, there were a lot of hurdles that I just couldn't see us getting over. So I went ahead and blurted it out. And I said, Willy, I need to stay in God's will and not get involved in a relationship. And I'm sure that's just what Willy wanted to hear.
Well, it's a romantic town for him, too. Remember that.
But he calmly responded, well, how do you know this isn't God's will? And good point, after all that God had said and shown me 2 nights earlier. Well, that excuse just fell flat. So I pointed out another relational barrier to him. I said, we live on 2 different continents. How will that work?
Seems like a legitimate question.
Yeah, well, Willy didn't agree. He said, that doesn't seem to be a problem somehow. I feel like it's just going to work out. So now I knew that he must have been feeling pretty strongly about us. So I threw one more obstacle at him, and that was wherever we lived together, we'd be far away from someone's family. Well, that meant that the children wouldn't be with their cousins and their grandparents, and that really bothered me. He just wrapped me in his arms and he held me close and he assured me that we would find a way. And I felt his calm strength and the warmth of his embrace, and I needed that to reassure me that our hearts were truly for each other, even though still we just barely knew each other. And we hadn't been in any kind of real life situation. So I just took a deep breath and I began to let myself rest in his arms. And then suddenly I noticed the aroma of his cologne, and it was having an effect on me. And my heart began to race again and my head swam and I felt incredibly drawn to him. And I thought, I'm falling in love.
So it appears that things have changed between you and Willy. Now, I'm interested to know how this relationship grows. You've only got 4.5 days left. Is that how this works? So let's dive into Tuesday morning. This is the morning after you've had your talk with Willy. The team is getting on the bus and heading out of town. Is that correct?
Yep. That morning, the team traveled 3 hours to a small town called Berdichev. We arrived, and one of our translators told us that the Americans don't usually come to this town when they're in Ukraine. So these people haven't really seen or met people from the States. Our large group was going to be a real curiosity for the people of the town there. Tom, the people of this town were fascinated with the 80s TV show Dynasty, and they believed that Americans were these glamorous people that walked around in sequin gowns, expensive suits, and perfect hair.
Well, But in the immortal words of Prince, you don't have to watch Dynasty to have an attitude. So how did this go from there?
Well, we were told that we needed to finish all of our ministry before 7 o'clock in the evening because that's when the streets would become empty. Because that's when Dynasty was on and everyone would be in their homes watching their TVs. And I had to laugh because I thought, okay, well, they're going to leave real Americans who are visiting them in their town so that they could go watch TV and see some, make-believe actors in a scripted show. So we kept that in mind, and we started to do some street ministry and hand out some flyers about our program that was going to be later that afternoon. And then it began to lightly rain. So that's not good with the equipment, of course. And the men grabbed the sound equipment and hurried it to the bus. And then the team were led to this charming coffee shop while the rain turned into a big downpour. And Willy and Natasha and Olga helped everyone understand what was on the menu. And we all ordered hot drinks and had these delicious pastries. And it was really enjoyable to hang out with the team members over this good food and drink. And when the rain stopped, the men went to set up the sound equipment on the outdoor stage where we were going to do our program that afternoon. So while us ladies sat and continued to enjoy the cafe, two singers named both Kathy, wow, slid into the bench across from me with these big smiles, and they said, "Oh, we see what's going on." And I wasn't sure what they were talking about, so I asked, "What do you see?" And they said, "You and Willy, are you two serious about this relationship?"
What I find interesting is we're asking questions about a serious relationship, and it was only a week before, even though it seems by the story that it could have happened over months, only a week before you had the conversation with Trish. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. So I told him that I really didn't know what to think. Willy wasn't what I had wanted in a husband. I wanted a man who lived in my country. I also was really afraid of being a second wife and a stepmom. I thought that I would wonder if he was thinking about me or if he was missing his first wife. I also didn't want his daughter to feel like she had to pick between moms. He didn't look like the guys that I usually was attracted to. I'd grown up in California near the beaches, and so I was, surfer dude kind of gal. Though he wasn't unattractive. So again, I told them that he was not what I thought I'd wanted. And one of the women told me that God doesn't give you the man you think you want. He gives you the man that you need to make your life better. And then the other Kathy told me about meeting Willy the year before, while he was still going through chemo for his cancer. And she said that he was so sweet and smart and caring, and everyone on the team loved him like a brother, but their hearts were so broken seeing him so thin and pale from the chemo and fighting cancer. So she told me that the team had been praying for him not only to be healed during the past year, but they also had felt like they needed to pray for God to bring him a wife. And they agreed that Willy and I complemented each other well, and that this was a God match. And I think that this was the talk I needed to help me get rid of those last barriers that I had in this relationship. My heart actually now started longing for Willy, but we only had 4 days left together.
It's an amazing story thus far. I can't wait to see where it keeps going. I mean, Dawn no longer is looking for Ken on the beach in California, so that's a good thing. And I don't know. It really, walking through a romantic town definitely has that kind of effect on anyone. Well, that wraps up this episode of Love Unexpected. To see photos and video clips that go along with this story, go to our website, loveunexpected.us. You can find the link in our episode guide. We would love to hear from you. So email your comments and questions at our website. If you enjoyed the show, we would love for you to share our podcast with your family and friends. You can listen to Love Unexpected on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to hit the subscribe and notification buttons so that you don't miss a single episode of our show. You can help us by leaving a rating as well as a comment or review. We look forward to connecting with you on social media. Our username @LoveUnexpectedPodcast on both Instagram and Facebook. Our producer and creator of original music for the show is Joe EP Music. Our host, Tom Howie. Our writer is Dawn Prushkovsky. Our media manager is Jean Prushkovsky.